Welcome to the Lemons and Pineapples podcast. I'm your host, Emma O'Brien, personal development coach, heart meth practitioner, dog photographer, and entrepreneur. In this podcast, I share tools, strategies, and amazing guest interviews to help you improve your mindset and your well-being with a sprinkle of fun and probably some mention of dogs along the way. So without further ado, let's squeeze the day. Hi folks, welcome to episode 40 of the podcast. Today my guest is Dr. Katie Murphy, and we're talking about the link between gut health and mental health. First up, a little bit about Katie. Katie Murphy has been serving clients for 18 years as a chiropractor and 4 years as an online health coach. She helps women lose weight, gain energy, strength, and mobility in a holistic and sustainable way so they can age gracefully and live a more abundant and fulfilling life. To help them attain these results, she helps to unravel the confusion around food and a healthy body by teaching a simple to follow macronutrient system, teaching her clients how to commit to consistent fitness strategies and leading them to empowered thinking so that they can lose unwanted pounds once and for all. Welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And as I was doing your intro, I put the word plants in there because I'm thinking macronutrients, plants, vegans. I'm a vegan, popped into my mind there. So just tell us a little bit to start off with. Our gut is often referred to as our second brain. I think a lot of us can relate to having read things about that, seen little bits about that. Could you tell us a bit more about why this is?
Absolutely. Excuse me. So within our guts, we have millions of nerve fibers, which is second only to the brain, which of course is why scientists have decided to refer to it as the second brain, right? And along with the billions of good bacteria within the gut, which we're going to learn a little bit more about today, that good bacteria and the millions of nerve fibers, they actually produce chemical messengers, which are called neurotransmitters. And those convey messages between your gut and your brain through the vagus nerve, which is exactly why it's the second brain, because it almost acts independently from the brain because of all of those nerve fibers. Crazy, right?
It's mental, and but I think it's just so important because we often neglect our guts with, I know we're going to be talking more about this, but we neglect our guts with what we eat, with medications we take, with, what we drink, not drinking enough water, stress, all of those things affect that. But I don't think it's something that's talked about enough, to be honest, because if you go to the doctor for something, unless you're going to an integral GP or a more holistic doctor, you won't hear anything about this.
It's astonishing. I cannot believe how infrequent it is talked about in the healthcare field.
So can you share with us how what we eat does affect our gut? So the one thing I know about, which is quite funny, is that our gut produces serotonin, which I want you to tell us a little bit more about that. I think that is a neurotransmitter, if I am correct. Yep. Okay.
That is correct. Yeah.
So some of my books about brain stuff have sunk in that I've read. And one thing that I found out quite accidentally is that pineapple is one of the foods that has some sort of enzyme in it that helps with the production of serotonin, which I thought was quite funny, given that my podcast is Lemons and Pineapples and it's about mental health stuff. Anyway, that is a complete aside.
Really funny.
So just tell us how what we eat can affect our gut health and consequently our mental health.
Absolutely. So I think it's all going to really make sense once you hear the big picture. So hang tight with me. I'm going to say a few things here that, so what you eat impacts your mental health in 3 very specific ways. Okay. So what you eat will regulate the inflammation within your body, and like the whole body is impacted through inflammation. And then it also impacts the immune system And secondly, it manages the level of neurotransmitters, as you were talking about, serotonin being the biggest one. And we're going to get into why that is. And then the third thing is it balances that microbiome, so the environment of the good bacteria within the gut. And all of those things impact your mood, your concentration, your level of motivation, how calm you are, your cognitive function, so your thinking and your reasoning. And of course, like you mentioned, serotonin is one of the very main natural happy drugs, so to speak. That's what I like to call it. The neurotransmitter, which is a hormone messenger. And 90% of the body's serotonin is produced right in the lining of the gut, which is exactly what impacts your mental health. That's the connection directly.
Yeah. So what is it we should be eating to help us naturally produce more serotonin?
That is such a great question. And I get into that very specifically on the 3 tips that we are going to talk about later. But the biggest picture here is plants, right? Plants. That's the big picture. And specifically, fermented foods would be another specific thing that you can eat. And then nuts and seeds are the other thing.
Okay. And I think it's so telling that animal products are not included on your list here. Not that we're agenda pushing, because I have to say I am mostly vegan, but I will have some cheese and an occasional bit of chocolate, because I found when I went vegan, and I am not the poster child for good nutrition, particularly because I don't eat as well as I should. But I found when I first went vegan, a hell of a lot of my hair fell out. And that was corrected by taking a skin, hair, and nail supplement and an iron supplement. I don't think it was an iron deficiency because I wasn't feeling tired. And I'm just trying to think. I think I probably had bloods done intermittently there that weren't weird. And the one thing that has maintained that is if I have a bit of cheese. So I think it was, for me, not enough of the correct proteins. That said, I don't eat enough natural proteins.
Well, I can understand that would be really hard. And I will say, though, I'm going to, debunk a little bit of that and just say that
Please.
fish and poultry, eggs, and some dairy actually can be good for us. I don't want to push that too much, but in my, research of understanding all of this, fish, poultry, eggs, and some dairy can actually really help us as well. But plants really are the number one thing that we need to talk about when we're talking about gut health. So, and we don't eat that enough, right? I mean, it's just not pushed. It's not our favorite foods because, right, let's be honest, it takes effort to make it taste good sometimes.
Yeah.
And we're just not raised that way. We eat a lot of junk food because it's on the go, it's easy, and it tastes good. And we are addicted to junk food. Let's be honest with ourselves. But
Yeah.
if we really want to be healthy and, we're on the hunt of what types of things we can do, this is definitely number one on the list. So
Yeah. And again, sorry, folks, not agenda pushing here with that. But I think also, plants and having a diet that has got less animal products in it is better for our environment as well. I think this is something that I've got, the older I get, the more conscious I get of it, is kind of trying to reduce my footprint. But that's a complete aside there. So what are 3 tips you can share for helping us to improve gut health? Obviously, we've talked about adding plants, fermented foods, and nuts and seeds, but what else helps our very, very important second brain to be able to function better so we can function better?
Well, one thing that we didn't talk about yet, Emma, is what's the link between our gut and our nervous system specifically. So I have a little bit more science I want to give before I talk about the tips, because I think it'll make a little bit more sense. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So I just want to help everybody really completely drive this point home, that there is a really complex communication going on between the brain and the gut. Okay. That's the big picture here. And that communication involves 4 key players. Okay. So don't get lost in the science. Follow me. Okay. So we've got the autonomic nervous system, we have the gut microbiome, we have the vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve 12, and then we have those neurotransmitters that we've been talking about, okay? So here, I'm going to break it down for you. I want you to think about this complex messenger system like a highway system, okay? So the road is the vagus nerve, the cars are the neurotransmitters, the road conditions are the microbiome, so that's the environment. And then our point A and point B are just simply the gut and the brain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
brilliant. What a great way to break it down. It's brilliant.
Good. Well, and then those hormone messengers, those neurotransmitters, particularly serotonin, like we've been talking about, and then the gut microbiome, those are the key players in regulating, like we talked about, regulating mood, motivation, your focus, your calmness, the cognitive functions. And like we said, it's because of that serotonin. That's predominantly the reason. And recent studies have actually shown that the complex balance of those neurotransmitters, because there's more than just serotonin, right? Let's be sure of that. And the microbiome, they play a significant role on a lot of levels within our health. So not just our gut. There's digestive disorders, there's skin diseases, immune function, and there's a whole host of neurological and mental health diseases that are all impacted by our gut balance. Isn't that insane that they don't talk about it more? So there's anxiety, depression, autism. Um, there's a whole list of more other things that they're just not talking about, and it makes me really kind of sad, right? And so the other things that we can do, if you want to jump into that, that's all the science, right? I want to talk about that complex communication. And if there's a break in that communication, like if we're not eating healthy, then that's going to impact that balance. So the other thing that we really need to be mindful of is, besides diet. So, I want to talk about the diet just a hint more, okay? Right? Eating a good variety of whole foods, like we said, emphasizing plants will actually help diversify your gut microbiome, which is another really important thing, because that helps you with all the different productions of all the different neurotransmitters in the gut, right? So in essence, too, sugar and processed food, the things that taste really fun and good and are easy to eat, they actually feed the bad bacteria and they interrupt that complex balance. And so it's good to be mindful of that point, because when you're feeding yourself those things, you're actually impacting your health in bigger ways than you're understanding, right? Okay. And I think I mentioned fermented foods, right? Did I mention that? So
You
things
did.
like kimchi, sauerkraut, Greek yogurt, those are really important things that help your gut microbiome. So
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, I think I read somewhere that often our gut microbiome will dictate what we want to eat. So if we have a gut full of bad bacteria because we've had lots of sugar, we're going to crave more sugar, because almost the bad bacteria like put the good bacteria in a box in a cupboard and tell them to shut up, because
absolutely.
we need
Yeah.
the sugar. Drink the Coke.
Yeah.
That's what we
Yes,
need.
and that causes those cravings. Yes, you're exactly right. And it's just this vicious cycle. And unless you decide to interrupt that cycle and consciously change your habits, it's just going to continue. Yes, and hence, overweight, that also plays a part, not to digress into that, but that leads into that, right? That vicious cycle. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious, because this is a podcast there's lots of conversations that have happened about anxiety, and it's something that comes up a lot, because it's a pattern of thinking that can be very destructive. I'm very curious as to how our gut microbiome and our guts with its neurotransmitters and everything affects anxiety. Could you say a bit more about that?
Yes, definitely. So, of course, as we've been talking about serotonin is one of the natural happy drugs. And it's, again, there's other neurotransmitters that we haven't talked about, just because we don't want to digress and get too scientific here. But we could name a few. We've got dopamine and GABA and a few others that they're all impacting your level of calmness, your level of your ability to tap into the brain's focus and concentration and calmness, all of those neurotransmitters, it's exactly what we've been talking about, honestly. It gets disrupted. That's really the big picture of it. Not to oversimplify, but just, that really is what happens. And so if your gut health is disrupted, imbalanced, then those neurotransmitters are imbalanced as well. That's really the big picture of it.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that can also happen with anxiety, and I know from my own experience and from a conversation I had, it was episode 13, where we talked about high functioning anxiety, is that obviously stress and anxiety can cause digestive issues. And then if you've got digestive issues, it then, especially things like IBS, which can be embarrassing and inconvenient, it causes more stress and it causes your gut to get worse. So I think there's so many things happening with this mind-body link that we don't take care of at all.
I just think we maybe don't even really understand the depth of why it's important. And yeah, actually, I was going to talk about that when you asked me about the tips that I could give you besides diet. The second important thing kind of flows right into that is improving your managing your stress levels. So balancing your nervous system. Remember, I talked about how the autonomic nervous system is one of the key players. Well, the autonomic nervous system is the part of your body that regulates the fight or flight response and the calmness. So we've got sympathetic versus parasympathetic. I don't want to lose you in all those terms. My point being is your nervous system needs to be balanced and regulated. And the way to do that is managing how you adapt to stress. Because what happens is when your nervous system is always on high alert due to chronic stress, your gut health is negatively impacted. That's what you were just talking about. But it goes both ways, right? If you manage your gut and your balance of your gut, you're going to impact the way your brain perceives stress and manages that stress. They go both directions. And so just a few tips. I'm sure that you've talked about this, so I don't want to digress the conversation, but I would like to just throw in ways to manage stress. The number one best way research shows to manage your stress, specifically which increases your serotonin levels, is to regulate your regulate your gut movement, is to exercise regularly. Any kind of exercise, right? A beautiful walk in the park, something when your body needs it, doing some weightlifting and a little bit high intensity cardio, all of those are valid and very important. But research shows time and time again that regularly exercising is something that calms your brain and helps your body be healthier in this way, managing your nervous system. And then, of course, you can do other things that calm your brain, right? Like taking a bath or journaling, music, reading, self-care type things, cleaning, organizing, whatever floats your boat, the things that actually help your nervous system calm down. Mindfulness, yoga, breath work, obviously, right? And then another piece of managing your stress level is actually having meaningful social connections. And I don't think we talk about that enough either. It's shown time and time again in research that that is one of the number one ways you can help to regulate your nervous system. And obviously that improves your gut health too, just like you were talking about, Emma. So
yeah, and it's something I talk a lot with my coaching clients, because I do a lot of stress and burnout and anxiety work with people, is some heart math techniques to really focus on slowing your breathing, consciously creating positive feelings within your body, and those somatic pieces of tuning into where you're holding tension and consciously starting to relax it. And then if we go a bit deeper, I've done a little bit of parts work to the extent that I learned it in the Martha Beck course that I've done, of actually, if you've got areas of tension, actually almost talking to those areas of tension to understand how we can get them to just kind of unclench and let go. Because I think often we hold tension and we don't realize we're tense. I had a session with a coaching client who was really, really stressed, and we started to calm her system down. And she said to me, I went out this week and I burst into tears somewhere, which is just so unlike me. And I said, well, we've kind of calmed the constant constriction of holding it all in. So some of it is going to start to seep out a bit. So that's the opportunity then to sit and journal, to sit and investigate, where is this coming from, and to process it. We can't control it all the time, and we know it's not always appropriate to be crying somewhere. She wasn't crying in a completely inappropriate place, but it's, again, and that's another point of, you know, in the appropriateness of expressing emotions, because often we're told it's not, you can't cry in public, not appropriate. And I think for the most part, if people get upset about something, we're actually all quite supportive. It's actually okay. It's not such an unsafe space everywhere. But the more we can learn that, the easier it is to de-stress. You know, in the heart math training I've done, it's just this or, you know, parasympathetic versus sympathetic nervous system, and just understanding how they both play a role, and being able to calm that fight or flight response. Because I mean, you can say a little bit more about this. I'm quite sure that constantly being in a fight response or a flight response, you've got your adrenals are going the whole time with adrenaline, your cortisol's going all the time, and at some point your body just goes, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's chronic stress. And it's a terrible thing for your body in all aspects. So you're right. That is something that really needs to be addressed if you're going to even make any difference in, you know, for instance, losing weight or you know, relationships. It impacts everything. It impacts your productivity. It's almost like, I like to think about it as, it's almost like a program running in the back of the computer. It's like constantly there and nagging at you and excuse me, preventing you from being your best version of you. And so you do need to, you know, set aside time and work on calming your nervous system. It is such a pivotal thing to calm all of those hormones down and really rebalance everything, because you know, just like as you're talking, those neurotransmitters, they're such key players, and cortisol will actually imbalance all of that too. So we definitely have to factor in calming our nervous system. That's something I do in my coaching as well. And then let's talk too, like, right, we've been talking about what can you do. You can actually go see a massage therapist, you can go see a chiropractor, right? Let's bring that in, because those are things that actually help calm your nervous system as well. So
yeah, and I think that's a great point you've made. Is we've talked a lot about things that you can do for yourself on your own that don't require somebody else, you know, the exercise, the eating better, and the you know, meditation, journaling. But sometimes one needs a bit of outside help to really break the cycle of stress, and that is 100% okay. And I think for anybody listening who's just thinking this is too much, I'm resonating with this, please find a practitioner who can support you, whether that is a coach, whether that for you is like with you, you're a chiropractor as well, whether it's someone who's more hands-on, whether it's a Reiki therapist, whatever it is. Sometimes you need extra people within your self-care regime to help you break a cycle of chronic stress and to get yourself healthy again.
Right. And to release the pent up emotion, which might sound cliche, but the reality is, if you haven't heard this before, sometimes emotions get trapped within the cells of the body. And the external help of hands on can actually really move that out when you're willing to release those emotions. And that's actually just something that I've seen as a chiropractor. I've seen people be able to get past, for example, low back pain. That's just one example. I've seen it time and time again where people come in with a pain in their body and it's been ongoing and they haven't addressed a deeper emotional issue. And eventually when they come to the place of feeling ready to release that pain goes away. Isn't that amazing how the body does that?
Yeah. It's
like
funny.
a signal. You know, the body's trying to say, deal with this, please.
Yes.
You've stuffed it for too long.
Yeah. Hello, it's time. I've nearly at the end of reading Peter Levine's Waking the Tiger. And obviously that's a lot of somatic stuff. He talks about trapped emotions in the body and caused by trauma that is just not been processed through all of the way. I've just totally simplified that there, but effectively our body holds on to the trauma because we haven't gone through the full trauma response of moving all the
Yes.
way through it.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
and I think it can be something that people would think, oh, this is a bit woo-woo, but I invite you, if you are experiencing mysterious pains that you've been to the doctor and there is nothing physically wrong with you, to start investigating the possibility that this could be something that could be moved through with some emotional work.
Absolutely. And I'd like to make the point that you don't always have to bring it to the conscious level of understanding what caused that pain. You don't always have to do that. So, just exploring, is this more than meets the eye, is helpful. And bringing somebody that you trust, like a practitioner, into that inner circle of helping you move that is really helpful. I've seen it and it's very beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We all deserve to live a fulfilled life and a happy life, but we're in charge of doing that for ourselves. So we are in control of what happens. We're in control of what we put in the body. We are in control of how we care for it. So this has been really, really super, and this has been such a great and enlightening conversation. I would like to finish us off by asking you to just recap your favorite tips for people to take on board to improve gut health, stuff that's easily actionable and you can start doing it literally now. No pressure, folks.
Yeah, that's an excellent point or question. So, number one, add in more vegetables. And just starting there, I think adding in more vegetables. And then the second thing is regulating your nervous system, finding a way that fits well for you. But like I said, research shows that exercise is number one. So whether that be simply taking a walk regularly, making a plan to include that. There's a whole host of other things like we talked about. And then the third thing that we didn't even address yet is probiotics. You can add in probiotics. Um, we didn't talk about that at all, but recent clinical trials have made very specific, or have shown that very specific strains of probiotics are capable of actually regulating mood imbalances because they increase the serotonin level. And I am just blown away by this research and the fact that it's not talked about. And anyway, there's a unique combination of three different probiotic strains that have been clinically proven to improve serotonin levels. So adding that in as well.
Yeah, I'm going to add, I've got those so that you've sent me. So I'm going to add those into the show notes so people can have a look at that and then start to make a note. So I'm curious about probiotics. Two things is, do we need to go for a really expensive, has to stay in the fridge probiotic? And my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that the probiotics have to get to the large intestine to be actually helping with this gut health, the serotonin and the mood and everything. Do we need to be looking for a probiotic that's got a thicker shell on it? What are your tips for that? That was two questions I just threw at you, but if you could.
No, those are importance questions. I'm glad you asked them. It is very important that you don't just grab something off the shelf. It does need to be refrigerated because we're talking about bacteria, and bacteria needs to be refrigerated. Yes. And that will tell you a little bit more about the quality if it is a refrigerated kind. And absolutely, you are correct. All of this good work that we've been talking about happens in the large intestine. It's in the lining of the large intestine that serotonin is produced. And so, that being said, you do need your probiotics to be able to get through your acidic stomach and the small intestine in order to actually be useful for your body. So, you do need a good quality brand. So, one of the things you can look for is look for a brand that has done third-party testing. That is a key thing to look for when you're trying to look for a good brand. And usually if they've done that, they've spent some good money on it and they're going to put that all over the label. So that's pretty important. Yeah, and you will see it in the cost, right? And that is unfortunate or fortunate, however you want to look at it, right? You pay for what you get. So yeah. Did that answer your questions?
I think it did. Yes. So, the second question was the casing on them, because I've seen here. I mean, I'm in South Africa. One that has got it's in an internal capsule, and then it's got like a thicker capsule round the outside of it. Does that make a difference? Should we be looking for that?
I'm going to go ahead and say no. I'm not an expert in knowing that for sure. So I'll say that with a caveat, right? But I will say I know of excellent brands that I would highly recommend that don't have that thick of a capsule. It's more in the chemistry of the capsule that matters. And again, when they do a third-party testing and they prove that it's actually effective, then you know that it's going to be getting to the large intestine. So I would say the third-party testing is more what you're looking for.
Okay, brilliant. I think that's great advice, because I think for people who are needing probiotics, I think unfortunately it's probably most of us with the stress and the food choices we often make. I think that's really great. Katie, thank you very much. This has been a really interesting and enlightening conversation. So I'm very excited to share this with the audience. Where can people find you online if they'd like to connect with you and find out a little bit more about your work?
Well, I gave a link so that you can join my email list. That's first and foremost. That's the best way to connect with me. But I am also on Facebook and Instagram, and those are also great ways to look me up. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. I will put your email link and your social handles in the show notes so people can go through and find you and connect with you.
Thank you. This has been great. I hope that it's a blessing for everyone listening. Thanks for joining us.
I'm sure it will be. Katie, thank you very, very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, folks. I hope this has been really interesting for you. Let me know. You can drop me a message on Instagram at Emma O'Brien Coach. Let me know what you most enjoyed about this episode, because I think we've had a lot of information in here. Thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you've enjoyed it, please share with your friends, and be sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. To find out more about my one-on-one coaching, please visit my website, which is emmaobriencoach.com. And remember, folks, when life gives you lemons, you can always choose another fruit. See you next time.